June meeting of the Lower Mount Bethel Planning Commission to order. If we can all stand and salute the flag, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the first order of business we have is to approve the minutes from December 16th. Now, everybody had them in the packet. Did everybody have a chance to look them over? Did anybody have any questions or comments or corrections? Okay. I'm going to move that we approve the December 16th minutes. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other? Okay, we only have 2 seconds. That's okay. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. Okay. The next order of business is going to be reorganization, but if you look down at the bottom of the agenda, it says the agenda is subject to change without further notice. And I'm going to interject another item in here. Today, a member of our commission, Brad Kiefer, called me up and said, listen, with the farming, with my family, with what all is going on in my life, I really, and looking down the barrel of what's happening in the township and how many meetings with this commission and all the things that are going on, he said he really didn't believe that he would be able to donate, and well, not donate, but put the time in that he would need to. And I said, well, Brad, you know, you have to do what you have to do, and he sent his letter of resignation in today. So what I am going to ask is that we have that letter, correct? So did everybody get a chance to look at that? No. You know what we can do? Can we just table the accepting his resignation so that everybody can just? Yeah. Right. Oh, you saw that. Oh, okay. Well then, I will make a motion that we accept Brad's resignation from the Planning Commission.
I'll second that reluctantly.
Okay. Bill is seconding that reluctantly. And certainly reluctantly, he's been here for, I believe, eight years and has worked very hard for the citizens of this township. So, does anyone have any other comments? Okay, then all in favor of accepting Brad's resignation, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay. And again, for the record, I would like to say that, we're very thankful for Brad's service over the last 8 years. The next thing we have to do, since this is our first meeting of the new year, is we have to reorganize. So the first thing we would have to do is appoint a chairman. I'm the current chairman, and I'm certainly willing to continue. Does anyone care to make a motion at this time?
I'll make a motion that you continue Pat McInerney as chairman.
Okay.
I'll make a second. I'll dig into it.
Okay. We have a motion that Pat McInerney is going to stay in the role of chairman, and we have a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, as far as vice chairman, Bill Rush is currently the vice chairman and is our longest serving member. And I would like to make a motion to reappoint him as the vice chairman.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Are you good with that, though?
Yes.
Okay.
As long as you're good with chairman.
Yeah, I'll be the chairman. Okay. So now we have a motion, we have a second. Any other comments or discussion? Okay. Then all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, we have no old business, we have no subdivisions, we only now go on to the main reason why we're here, and that is not the last meeting, but the meeting before, the Board of Supervisors charged the Planning Commission with coming up with an ordinance that would govern the construction and the use of data center. We all know that there has been a lot of talk about data centers in our township, and this is not something that we're addressing in terms of, pro, anti, anything like that. What we are doing is we are addressing a need in the township for an ordinance that would govern that. So they charged us with that, and that is what we have to do. Now, once that we got that, what I did was I contacted a lot of people. I contacted the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. I contacted John Snook. I got a lot of input from a number of other different sources. And what we need to do is we need to work as quickly as we can to get something, but we have to make sure that we do it thoroughly and we protect ourselves, from making sure that the citizens are protected by what could be a fairly invasive industrial development in our little township. Now, as we go through this, we're going to essentially, I'm going to work off of, because in the research that I have done, I have found that Low Hill Township in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, happens to be a township very similar to ours. It's low population, a lot of farmland, very rural. And they put together and have actually enacted, it's actually enforced. Now, there's been a number of townships that are working on data center ordinances, but Low Hill Township has actually passed one. And it's gone through the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, and when I called them, I said, who's got one that's done? And the person I talked to said, well, we have two. He said, but here's the one that really fits your township. And when he sent it to me and I looked through it, he was absolutely right. It's a township very similar to ours, and as I went through it, it provides so much in terms of things that can be almost directly translated into something that will be very good for our township. So, like I said, what we have to do is we're going to have to move quickly. We would like to get an ordinance done, all right? Now, the first big question that we would have, Low Hill Township's data center ordinance is actually an amendment to their overall township zoning ordinance. So the way this is formatted is that way. In other words, it just simply breaks into the overall township ordinance. It's a whole new section, and everything that flows through this ordinance actually comes from the original zoning ordinance for the township. Now, my original thought was that's probably not a bad idea, but as I think about it, in order to expedite and move things along, my thinking has shifted, and what I would like to do is I would like to approach this as a standalone ordinance dealing with data centers. That way we don't have to format it into our other one. It can be done relatively quickly. We can take the text, and any of the text that is, that fits perfectly, we just write it in, we're good. And then we can move through, we can make the small changes that are necessary, and do it that way. So the first thing I would like to do is I would like to ask the members of this committee, and before I do that, I would like to make this announcement. As we're going through this, we are the ones up here who are charged with this. I am very happy to see a lot of public support here. And there will be times when we get to the end of sections where I will ask, is there anyone in the public who had input on that particular section. In other words, you can't use it like a time to come in and tell us what your feelings are as far as, you know, overall data centers and I'm mad at this guy and I want to yell about this. What we have to do is stay very focused. Is this cutting out on me or is this behaving itself? Oh, you turned it down. No, it's all right. Is it coming through okay? Because it doesn't sound good to me. Anyway.
It's not. I thought
Go back the way it was.
How about if I just do this? Is this good enough?
No, we can hear you, it's just overmodulated.
Okay, so, now I don't know what you mean. My voice is overmodulated or this is overmodulated?
Not your voice, the microphone.
Maybe you were
So
too
you're good
close
right
to
there.
it.
You're good right
Okay,
there.
all right, if I just keep going.
That's it.
All right, then, now, once we get to the end of our meeting tonight, I will certainly ask anyone, you know, if they have anything they would like to add, anybody that, you know, would like to help along with this process. And you know, I certainly do not want to at all shut the public out from this. And that's not my intention, but my intention is to move things along. And when you work with large groups, it's difficult to get things done. So I am going to be allowing for input at different times. And all I would ask is that you respect that idea that we talk about the section we were talking about. And if you don't really have you know, anything to say about that, then you know, don't come up and share the nothing that you have to say with us. So, and I'm saying that as a guy who really does like to talk. So you know, I know that I'm guilty of that. So I do apologize. So what I would like to do is just simply ask the professional staff that we have. We have our engineer here, and we have our solicitor. Is there any difficulties that you see as far as a standalone ordinance versus a you know, an amendment to our zoning ordinance?
From a legal perspective, I don't have any concerns with it being a standalone ordinance.
Okay.
Neither do I. I've seen other towns do the same thing, standalone or
Right.
text amendment.
Right.
I think you have the liberty to making a standalone ordinance or amending the ordinance.
Okay. Thank you. And then I would ask the members of the commission, you know, how do you think? What do you think? You agree with me? Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like we're going down the right path, the way you want to go about it.
If that moves it along, because we're certainly behind the gun here.
Yeah, right. All right, so, well, that would take care of the very first thing, which is we're going to proceed and write a standalone ordinance. Since we just finished the first section, is there anybody from the public who would like to weigh in on that? Go ahead.
I would suggest that you get a rough draft first thing.
Oh, well, we have a completed draft.
But
Yes.
a rough draft of what we're gonna have.
Oh, yeah, what we're gonna have, yes,
You
absolutely.
get that rough draft, then you present it at a meeting, hand it out to everybody that's here. We'll look at it, give you some feedback.
Okay, that sounds very reasonable. Okay, but again, what we're gonna do right in the beginning is approach it as though it's going to be a standalone ordinance, because otherwise, it would be a completely different way to proceed.
I don't see a problem.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, now, if we go to page 1 of 23, it's the Low Hill Township, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, an ordinance amending the Low Hill Township zoning ordinance of 2025 to define and add specific requirements for digital infrastructure facilities and their digital infrastructure accessory uses. So in their ordinance, digital infrastructure is what they are talking about. What they mean is, you know, data centers. And what we're going to do is would recommend that we use the same language, and we go with digital infrastructure, meaning data centers. But I guess it could be a little more on, it's a more general term. A data center might be a specific type of data infrastructure. But if there are more coming down the line, then, then we would still be covered, all right? Okay, now,
Another point,
Go ahead.
the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission has already approved this. So the closer we can stay to what they've already approved, the better we'll be.
Put data center in parentheses, you got it.
right, well, yeah, yes, that's what we're going to do. And it's going to mention data centers, in a lot of different ways, so. Now, the very first part of any ordinance that I've ever worked on always begins with the whereas statements, whereas, right? It sounds kind of like, a little suggestive, but it's not. What it is just the reasons why we want to undertake this, all right? And as I went through these, most of them apply, some of them don't at all, all right? So what I'd like to do is go through these kind of quickly, and if we can get through this, that would be, that'd be good. It says Low Hill Township, Lehigh County is a Pennsylvania Township, second class, existing under and pursuant to the second class township code, various other laws of the current Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and is governed by, now for them, it's a 3-member board, so we would just change that to 5-member board of supervisors. I say we just go with that. Does anybody up here have any issue with that? Good. The next one says, whereas Article 6 of Pennsylvania Municipal Planning Code, Act of July 31st, 1968, blah, 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 as reenacted and amended, Article 6, authorizes the supervisors to enact, amend, and repeal zoning ordinances applicable within the township, okay? So that's what we are going to do. We are going to enact one. So I say we go with that. Okay. The next one says Low Hill Township is participating in a multi-municipality planning mode in Lehigh. So this one does not apply, and the next 3 are the same type. They're talking about the interplay between the different townships up there. They had multi-municipality zoning. So we are going to get rid of all of those.
There's one in between there.
Which one? Well, see, this is the, these are all multi-municipal comprehensive plan things.
Yeah.
So we're not involved in anything like that. And then this deals with Lehigh County, so, this, well, then we're not gonna worry about those. So we're going to go down to the second to the last one, which says the supervisors expressly find that planning for the potential location of a lawful land use within a limited zoning district does not constitute approval of any specific project, nor does it obligate the township to approve or any particular application for same. That one applies, and I think it's important. Anybody have an issue with that? Okay. The one underneath that, the last one on that page, says the supervisors further find that under Pennsylvania law, municipalities may not unreasonably exclude lawful land uses, and that the appropriate exercise of zoning authority is to provide for such uses in a controlled manner, subject to objective performance standards and public review, which again is very important and certainly applies in our case. And I would like to leave that one in as well. We're all agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Moving down, it says, the next one, whereas the supervisors find that permitting digital infrastructure facilities only by conditional use within the townships, and here it says regional use overlay district, and what we're going to do is just simply say it's industrial district, ensures that each proposal is evaluated on a site-specific basis with full consideration of cumulative impacts, infrastructure capacity, emergency services, and compatibility with surrounding land uses, while allowing the supervisors to impose conditions of approval which further the purposes of the Pennsylvania Municipal Planning Code and the Township Zoning Ordinance, and mitigate potential deleterious effects of such digital infrastructure facilities on the public health, safety, and welfare of the community. So that one, I think is very important, and what it's saying is that we should treat this ordinance specifically as a conditional use. So what I would like to do is ask again our professional staff. In my mind, that's very important because it gives us really more control under our own actual zoning ordinance, which is what, this isn't going to be an amendment to, but it's obviously going to have to exist under the rules of that as well.
Sure, so essentially, I guess it's important to just lay out that there's 3 ways that the commission could go about formulating this. You can have it as a conditional use, a special exception, or by right.
Right.
By right would be no conditions, this use is permitted by right. With a conditional use, essentially it would be approved, but in order to be an approved use or use by right, it would have to meet certain conditions. And those conditions, the conditional use would be heard by the Board of Supervisors. So ultimately, it would be the Board of Supervisors who determine whether or not those conditions are met. The third option is the special exception, which is very similar to conditional use, except that instead of going before the Board of Supervisors, it would be in front of the zoning. It would be up to the zoning board to make the decision as to whether or not the conditions were met. So I would agree, our recommendation would be to have it as a conditional use.
Right. Justin, you have any comment there?
Not much to add, I totally agree. Obviously, before the meeting, I prepared Upper Nazareth Township, Forks Township, Low Hill Township, Lower Nazareth Township, all have it as a conditional use.
Right, and
All municipalities within the, the general area are using conditional use. And what that does is it gives the supervisors more control. So it'll come in initially as a conditional use application, that's the zoning application side. There'll be a public hearing before it goes to the planning commission, then there'll be a public hearing, and then any of those conditions that are imposed at that hearing are later shown up on the land development plan. So they actually have to come through twice. So it gives a little bit more oversight going with a conditional use.
right, now, thinking ahead, when they go through with this plan is going to be multifaceted. I can't see them trying to get everything that they want to do done in one step. That seems very unlikely to me. But maybe they can, but in any case, if they are going to be doing it in phases, they would have to come to the board as they undertook to, propose and begin, digging and shoveling at any phase. They would have to come and ask for specific conditions to be met and ask for approvals, right?
Correct.
Okay, so see, I think that this gives us the most control. Yeah. Agreed. Okay. And one other thing, this particular document, which I shared with the rest of the Planning Commission, is Data Center Ordinance Guide, and this was actually put together by Chester and Montgomery County in Pennsylvania. And what they do is they went through and they thought about everything that should be found in an ordinance that governs data centers. And then what they do is they have suggested, they give you the overview of it, and then they give you ordinance language. And as I went through this, it seemed to me that Low Hill Township had maybe used this document because a number of things right from here show up in here. And as I looked through this, I thought, okay, this is a very good guide to make sure that, when we're done, we have everything we want. Because when you look at something like the Low Hill Township Ordinance, it's easy to say, this applies, this doesn't, this applies, okay, now we're done. But what you haven't done is you haven't thought about what isn't here that maybe you do want. But this guide is pretty comprehensive, and what it does is it says, here's all the things you should be thinking about. So as we go through this process, we have to remember that we also want to make sure that we're getting everything, and that's the harder part than just simply going through and saying, yep, this is all good. because what about the things that we might have missed? So anyway, I've gone through and looked at everything that they have in here, and I'm going to refer to this for a number of instances where Low Hill Township has simply referred back to their own ordinance, because remember, the way they did it was as an amendment. And so they just say, okay, just simply go back to, the restrictions we already have on sound and vibration and things like that. So, with that in mind, the point that I started out to make is still the one I want to make, and that is, as a conditional use, I think it gives us the best, the most control in the way that we can move forward. So we don't have any issues with that, correct?
No issues.
Okay. All right.
I have no idea.
Okay. Yeah, all right, here we go. Now, the one after that says, whereas the township finds that conditional use review and approval is the appropriate mechanism for determining whether a digital infrastructure facility can satisfy mandatory performance standards. So that's just basically reiterating what we already said. We think it's the best way to go. So we're moving through that, correct? Good. The supervisors further find that the adoption of detailed, objective, and enforceable performance standards governing digital infrastructure facilities is necessary to ensure that the township retains regulatory control, protects public health, safety, and welfare, and fulfills the township's planning obligations and goals under, and then they mention the Northern Lehigh Multi-Municipal Comprehensive Plan. But what I would just put in there is the Lower Mount Bethel Township Comprehensive Plan, and our own zoning ordinance. Okay.
All good.
All good. Now, the next one, it says pursuant to Article, it refers specifically to a Low Hill Township zoning ordinance, so we're not going to put that one in there. We're going to move to the next one. It says, whereas the supervisors deem it to be in the best interest of the general welfare of the township residents to update and amend provisions of the zoning ordinance to provide definitions and regulations for digital infrastructure facilities, that's why we're doing this. Well, we're not going to be updating and amending our ordinance. Essentially what we're going to be doing is enacting a standalone ordinance. So we're going to change the language so that it says that. Okay? Good. Any issues? Okay. The supervisors find that digital infrastructure facilities can create land use impacts materially different in character and intensity from traditional office, warehouse, or light industrial uses, including but not limited to substantial electrical infrastructure needs, backup power generators, fuel storage, cooling infrastructures, noise, lighting, and emergency response planning. Now, this was a big topic of the discussion in last night's supervisor meeting, which was we do have a fallback position with our own conditional use in our current zoning, but it's not specific. And what this is saying is that digital infrastructure facilities have very, very specific. They place very, very specific demands on the township, on its residents, on its emergency structures, it's water, it's power, all those other things. So it's making the case where this is definitely needed and called for. So, this one, kind of a no-brainer. All right. The next one, whereas the township is a rural municipality with limited road capacity, limited emergency resources, and limited utility and water infrastructure in certain areas, I would change that really to in all areas in terms of limited water infrastructure, since we don't have any kind of city water at all. The supervisors find it necessary to ensure that any such digital infrastructure facilities in facility use is designed, located, and operated to protect the health, safety, and welfare of township residents. So again, the idea here is we have limited infrastructure and limited resources. And we definitely need to make sure that we can, take as much control as we can to see that we protect the health, safety, and welfare of our precious citizens.
Mr. McNary, I just want to go back
Go ahead.
for 1 minute.
And feel free to cut in whenever you need to.
Okay. As far as where it talks about it being amending provisions of the zoning ordinance,
Yes.
you had mentioned that we would change that because this is a standalone policy.
Yes.
Technically, it's still an amendment to the zoning ordinance, even though we're not changing the language or adding a new overlay. So it still would be essentially treated as an amendment.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. Well, we'll tidy up all that language when we get to the dotting the i's and crossing the t's. Okay. Thank you. The last one on that page. The supervisors find that objective performance standards and conditional use review and approval are appropriate to evaluate site-specific impacts of digital infrastructure facilities, including noise, setbacks, buffers, stormwater resiliency, traffic, emergency access, and decommissioning obligations, and establishing such performance standards constitutes a reasonable exercise of the township's authority to regulate land use and the intensity thereof pursuant to our zoning limit. So that one is also a very important statement. We're all good. Okay, now we're on page 3. Okay. Whereas large-scale cooling demand may affect private wells and base flow in and what it tells us is the Switzer and Jordan Creek, which isn't really going to be affected here, but what we would say is local watersheds, and the township relies on, now I'm not sure if this is true or not, and maybe Justin can help us, relies on fractured bedrock aquifers with variable yield. Therefore, sustainable groundwater withdrawal is an appropriate regulatory metric.
Yes.
So we're in fractured zones, right? As a result of glacier activity tens of thousands of years ago.
Yes.
Okay.
Very similar to what was Twin Township.
Okay.
Hey, Pat, so with the quarry being down there, with the non-conforming ag use, so that water that's in that quarry would be used for cooling, so maybe that might be.
Well,
something.
we don't really know anything about that.
So I'm just saying the non-conforming ag, that would have to be in your ordinance as well.
Right,
Okay.
yes. And again, what this is going to be allowed in the industrial zone.
Right.
Now, if there is, a quarry that is adjacent to any of this or is found in this and it has water in it, it would have to be, that would be part of where it says private wells and base flows in the local watershed. So that would be one of the things that we would absolutely be monitoring, yes.
Right. If
Yeah.
it was industrial.
Right.
But ag would be out of the question.
Well, again, we don't have a proposal in front of us.
Right.
They have not come to us. Now, when we had the town hall that they ran, their original plan did include building on farmland. Now, the supervisors have all come out and said that they're not going to rezone the township.
Right.
That's entirely up to them, and that's not anything that we're going to be discussing here this evening. Because we can't really respond to anything that we don't really have. We don't have a proposal at this point. So, but what you're saying is, a water, it would actually be a surface water, and this may affect that. So we would certainly, and again, all that we're going over here is the reasons why we want to have this ordinance, right? So that would be something we would absolutely want to pay attention to. Yes. Okay. So we're all good with that. All right. Whereas the supervisors find that requiring applicants to disclose maximum designed electrical demand at full build-out is necessary to evaluate land use impacts, cumulative infrastructure effects, and compatibility with surrounding uses, and to prevent phased or modular development from obscuring the ultimate intensity of the proposed land use, as the township's electrical distribution system is rural in character, served primarily by radial feeders and limited substation capacity. Therefore, unmanaged concentrations of high-load facilities could require off-site transmission upgrades that create reliability risks and generate land use impacts from substations, switchyards, and emergency generation for the township. Now, this section has a lot in it. It has a whole lot in it. We are different from Low Hill Township in that we have the power plant right here. So where it says that, they are mainly served by radial lines and things like that, we would have to spend a little bit more time making sure that our language in this one fits our particular zone, because like I said, we are served by a power plant right in our township. So,
Not all of us.
no, not all, I understand, not all of us, but I'm fairly certain that the power that this, if it's proposed and if it goes through down in that region, I'm sure that, that's where most of the power would come from. And we should, you're absolutely right, make note of the fact that there are different power companies supplying different parts of the township. So, we would have to tidy that up and make sure that we have all our bases covered there. Also, the thing that is, I think, very important in this as well is the thing I was alluding to a little bit earlier, where we have phased or modular development. Like when you come in and you say, okay, here we are, this is part of our, this is part of our plan, and here it is, and now are we okay? Are we good? Yes. We have to make sure that with this thing, we're talking about at build-out. When we have reached the end, we need to know where are we at the end. We can't make judgments and policy based on what we have that's part of something. We have to make sure that we know where we stand when the whole thing is built out. So again, with this one, I think we will need to get together with Justin and with legal and tidy that up a little bit, but obviously that one is very important. Anybody have any way in on any of that?
Right on the line of that one.
Yes, exactly, that's what we need. Yeah, and again, what we need to do is, we need to make sure we're at build out. And it was in reading through things like this where I thought that the Low Hill people really did their homework. Like they weren't, they really have it, I think, covered pretty well. Anyway, moving on. Whereas the township further finds that rural electric grid capacity, groundwater yield, and emergency response capability vary by location and must be evaluated on a site-specific basis, and finds that permitting digital infrastructure facilities only by conditional use within the, and again it says regional use overlay, we can just go with industrial zoning district, is necessary to allow site-specific evaluation of land use impacts while preserving the township's rural character and protecting neighborhood properties. Now this one is also important because our industrial zone is actually broken up in the township. We have a large portion of it in one spot, and then we have more of it in a different spot. So there would be different, different kinds of geographical aspects that would have to be dealt with, and all kinds of other things. And we have to make sure that this is going to cover us, no matter where something like this is placed. Okay? So again, we're going to tweak that one, but we're going to go largely with what it is mostly saying. Okay?
I brought a copy of the zoning map so the audience can see, they can take a break or whatever, you can see what we're talking about.
Right, if you could just kind of hold it up and...
For the two industrial zones, we're talking about the light purple area.
Yeah, the light purple areas on the zone. So you can see that there are two major ones.
I'll spread this out and so it's easy seen. You're talking about adding as a conditional use in that industrial zoning district.
Right, yes, and that, there, right, and there are two of them that are, two large areas. So we would, we're making sure that whatever we do covers all of that. And so that's what we're doing.
to, have a map in the township office?
I think there is one, isn't there? Yeah, there's a zoning map right in the office.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Yep. Now, as you can see, I'm moving quickly. And, you know, if this is annoying or bothering you, I apologize, but I'm going to continue moving quickly. Whereas the supervisors find that emergency service coordination, fire protection planning, hazardous materials response planning are necessary due to the presence of lithium battery systems, fuel storage, electrical equipment, continuous operations commonly associated with digital infrastructure facilities, and present unique hazards to the township, which has limited emergency response resources. So again, what this is saying is, once again, data centers have, you know, some very unique present some very unique problems in terms of, you know, emergency service planning. So we're definitely going to have to get the fire department in on this, and they're going to have to weigh in, and, you know, we want to make sure that, you know, we know exactly what's there. And believe me, as we get through this, you'll see they're going to need to tell us everything they're planning on doing and what ramifications that has for specifically our fire department. Like, here's things you better get ready for, so, okay.
Also about protecting our groundwater if something should happen with those hazardous
Oh,
materials.
absolutely, and we have a whole lot about that coming up.
Okay.
Yes. Whereas the supervisors find that financial security for decommissioning the site restoration is necessary to ensure that obsolete facilities and associated infrastructure can be removed and the property restored for reuse without imposing costs to the township or its taxpayers. Now, when I read something like that, what I think is this: the way technology evolves, I can imagine 3 years down the road, a data center the size that they want to build and think they need might fit in the kitchen. Do you know what I mean? And then we have all of these buildings that are no longer useful. And then what do? Do we end up stuck with that? See, that's something that we want to think about as well, because who knows where all this ends up? We don't. This is you know, this is uncharted territory. We're all going down. The whole country's going down, and we have to make sure that we take care of that. So that one is obviously very important as well. So no issues with that, correct?
No.
Okay, good. Okay. This next one deals with, it says, desire to add provisions to the zoning ordinance. So what this one is saying that, again, and you just told me that they're all amendments, but this is specifically language that says it's amending, it's just another section of the zoning ordinance. So this one doesn't really apply the way we want to do it, as far as I can tell, but by what you said earlier, Carly, I'm not sure that that's true anymore.
Yeah, we can look into that.
Okay, all right. Okay. The last one then says, the supervisors determined that this ordinance represents a balanced and reasonable implementation of the township's, again, multi-municipal planning obligations, and what I would say is, you know, our own comprehensive plan and our own zoning ordinance, by allowing digital infrastructure facilities in a limited location subject to rigorous land use standards while preserving the township's rural character and protecting residents and taxpayers, and the adoption of this ordinance constitutes a reasonable exercise of the township's authority to regulate land uses and the impacts thereof. So what that does is sum everything up and said, we think this is a very reasonable thing we're doing. Anybody think we're being unreasonable? Okay, now, those were all of the whereas statements. And again, like I said, I've done a number of ordinances in my 14 years, 15, however many years I've been doing it, and they all begin the same way. This is why we're doing this. So, since we are at the end of that section, does anybody on the commission wish to add anything to that? I didn't come up with any other ones that we might want to add. When I looked through this, and I thought about it, I was thinking, okay, are there things that we might be missing as far as rationale for why we're doing this? And I didn't have anything else. Carla, you have anything that you think might be missing or you might want to add?
No, I think this is pretty
I think it's a very complete list. Justin, how about you?
I agree, yes.
Okay. Okay, if there's anyone from the public,
Yeah, going back to page 1, if you go down to the 5th one, it starts out talking about the multi-municipal plan. But it finishes, and maybe that language is redundant, but then it talks about modern infrastructure intensive employment generating land uses, etc. I don't know if we would eliminate that entire whereas, maybe just change it so it applies to our township rather than multi-municipal.
All right.
Unless you feel that's covered elsewhere.
well, I think, I take your point, and we can certainly do that, we can put that one back in. Although it mentions protecting our rural character in a number of other points at a number of different times. But we can certainly add that one back in and just change the beginning.
Other municipalities have done, property value guarantees.
Say that again?
Property value guarantees.
Property value guarantees.
Yep.
I don't know how you could do that.
I don't know how you could do it either, but other ones have done it.
I'm gonna make a note of it here, and I'm going to look into that, is all I can tell you. I mean, so many things can happen,
Yep.
but I will make a note of that. And when you say so many have, do you know any?
I don't know them specifically, but I know there was others that have done it, yes.
All right, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Annika, I'm with the Delaware River Keeper Network, and I just wanted to say that I think you should add to the whereas, that you will comply with Article 1. You'll uphold your duties under Article 1, Section 27 of the Pennsylvania Constitution, and making clear that just because a data center comes under compliance with all the standards that you're gonna lay out in the ordinance, your final decision still is going to, require you to uphold those duties to your communities, to the environment, and making sure that if you find a project, despite coming into compliance with what's laid out here, is in fact a violation of the constitutional rights of the people of Pennsylvania, clean air, clean water, healthy environment, you have yourselves covered, so I would really urge you, it's a duty regardless of whether you put in, but I would really urge you to cover that, put that in.
Okay, do you have pad and paper?
I do have that.
Could you just write that up for me?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then hand it to me?
And hand it to you?
Yes.
Absolutely.
You didn't know.
Well, I can also, I have things too, but if we have, substantial additions or things, we think I can also send it in an email.
You can just send it, you can email it to the office?
If that's helpful, yeah.
Yes. Okay. See, I'm old school, I got a legal pad, I put it on a legal pad, Okay. Go ahead.
Where can we find this low hill, ordinance?
It's
on their website. It's on their website.
It's on Low Hill Township's website.
Yeah, it is on Low Hill, okay. Will we post it on the Lower Mount Bethel website, or?
No, but it's on.
Did you say,
It's
could
on
we?
No Data Center LMBT, that page tonight, you go to our Facebook page, No Data Center LMBT.
Okay.
On tonight's event, it is posted on discussion.
And we could post it on our website, couldn't we, Meg?
We will
We can
post
check.
on ours as well.
Okay. And again, Low Hill Township it's on their website, so you just go to Low Hill Township and, they have a section there on ordinances and you can, look that up. Because it says recent activity, and that's where you would go. Because again, it is an amendment to their overall ordinance, and that was adopted back in 2025. So you don't necessarily have to look at the whole ordinance, but you would be interested in just this section, because that's what we're working on. Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Go back to page 2, the last whereas,
The last one, got it.
where it mentions, site-specific impacts, noise, setback, buffers, stormwater resiliency, traffic.
Right.
I think we need to add light, heat, and vibration. Because those are certainly large considerations.
Right. Okay,
against.
yes, I think you're right. Now, that is addressed in here, but we can put it in the whereas statement, so, we know it's
So,
coming.
But, yeah, we know we get to it with the, standards for the noise.
Right, the light, the heat, and the noise,
But
yes.
it's up here, and.
Yeah, right. Then, it'll let you know it's in the works.
Yeah. And then just to summarize, a to-do list for legal and you, Justin, would be, on page, 2, to change the language slightly in the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th whereas.
And this is on what page, Sandra?
The page, first page. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just where, we're gonna change that language, and I don't know if that was, we're gonna look into that.
Yep, that's on my to-do list.
Okay, and also on page 3, the 5th one, I have a note here that we're gonna look into that too,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay.
And again, what we're looking at here are kind of the generalities, and when we actually have to make this into, an enactable document, it's going to have to, have everything in line, everything's gonna have to be, ready to go. So yes, we will make sure that the language fits, everything that we need and addresses all of our concerns. Okay. Now, moving along, I'm on page 4. A lot of the beginning, it says the following subsections of this ordinance contain amendments to the Low Hill Township. This doesn't apply to us. Section 984, 989, reserved. They're going to get rid of those because what they did was they're formatting this amendment to their zoning ordinance. And what they have are reserved spaces, which we have in our zoning ordinance as well. This section is reserved for things that may come in the future. And if we were going to do this as an amendment, then we would be tapping into our reserved space. But we're not going to do it that way, so we're going to get rid of those first things. It says section 2, text amendments, this section is going to be deleted, this section is going to be deleted. So the next section that we're going to be working on is actually going to be definitions, all right? Now, if you look at our zoning ordinance, we have, I don't even know, 15 pages or something of definitions. And if we were going to be making an amendment, we would just simply have to then go back and fit these into our definitions. But as a standalone ordinance, and Carly, just help me out here, we can refer back to the definitions in our zoning ordinance and then just simply add these as part of the standalone. So we don't have to fit them in to where they go in the zoning ordinance, right?
Yeah, I believe so, but yeah, we'll do kind of a comprehensive, once we have an idea.
Right.
Based on feedback from tonight, we'll just do a comprehensive and make sure everything is done, what needs to be done.
Okay. Now, what they have, now if you have ever involved yourself in the grueling tedium that is municipal law, you really understand how mind-numbing it is to read some of these things because they have to be legally defensible, no offense, but they have to conform. And a lot of this is just jargon, but it has to be there. And what we have to do is we have to define things very, very specifically. Without specific definitions, then we don't exactly know what we're all talking about. So in this particular ordinance, they have identified they have identified 4 new terms. And I'm going to add a couple because they referred to their own ordinance later for other, or actually, there's going to be a section that deals with noise where we're going to have to define another aspect of noise based on the handy-dandy guide I have here. So the definitions that they have are digital infrastructure facility, which we all know what we're talking about is a data center. But the actual definition of it is a little more complicated than that to make sure that our bases are covered. And that not only defines what it is, it also in a way, kind of tells you what it does not include, right? It doesn't include customary office uses. It doesn't include personal or consumer telecommunications equipment. We're not coming for your little server under your desk or your phone, okay? This has got nothing to do with any of that. But again, we have to make sure that we understand that that's all part of that. And then it says, digital infrastructure facility accessory use. Now, again, when you start to deal with things like saldo and zoning ordinances, accessory uses are things that have to be regulated. So you're going to have this data center, but it's going to require possibly buildings that need to be built to support it. They are the accessory use buildings. So we have to make sure we define what we mean by a digital infrastructure facility accessory use. Also, in this ordinance, what they have discussed is not only a digital infrastructure facility, but a hyper-digital infrastructure facility. And in this one, we're talking about something that at electrical buildup is going to be 50 megawatts or greater. Anything greater than that, we're going to classify, because they classified it as a hyper-digital infrastructure facility. So we have that, okay? I think that the definitions that they have are very good. I don't have any problem with them, and so I would recommend that we just simply adopt them. And then what they have, and this is something that is important in the context of what we are trying to regulate, is a sensitive receptor. A sensitive receptor is all residential uses, schools, including commercial schools, preschools, daycare facilities, nursing homes, assisted living facilities, recreational facilities, places of worship, public parks, campgrounds, restaurants, outdoor dining, municipal government facilities with outdoor recreation facilities. So a sensitive receptor is any abutting land or land within a, whatever prescribed distance we have from some place like that, where you're going to have people. So it's going to be different from, say, just abutting a public roadway, right? So in other words, what a sensitive receptor does, and later on it becomes important because we're going to have different classifications of buffers depending on whether we are a buffer that is abutting a sensitive receptor or not. So we'll have different standards for those, okay? Hold on one second, okay? So those are the new terms that Low Hill wanted to add to their zoning ordinance. What we would do is we wouldn't attach them to the ordinance back in the section where we have definitions. We would just simply state these definitions right in the ordinance itself. And what I would also want to include in there, and we will talk about this when we get to that, is DBAs and DBCs, because we're going to be monitoring sounds. And what DBA and DBC stand for are different ways that we can register and record the loudness of sounds, the decibel scale. So when we get to that, we'll spend more time talking about that. So when I went through this, it seemed to me that we had to come up with definitions for the 1, 2, 3, 4 things they have, plus the 2 others that are going to relate to something that we are going to add in that's not part of this. So that's the section that deals with definitions. And that's also, just like the whereas section, is a very important part of any ordinance so that everybody knows what everybody's talking about, even though when you read it, like I said, it makes your eyes close. So, who has comments about this section? Go ahead.
Going to the section about the sensitive receptors.
Yes.
They say recreational facilities.
Yeah.
I would consider the Delaware River a recreational area. We've we've known some of these power plants, it's been mentioned that, you know, kayakers on the river can't hear because of the noise.
I've been out there many times myself, and it's the same problem.
Right, so
Yeah.
maybe instead of facilities, recreational, choose another noun for that instead of facilities, recreational areas.
Recreational facilities and areas, how about that?
That works for me.
Park requirements and
Right.
trails.
Okay,
I think
yeah.
we should, add farms into that language as well.
Pardon me?
Farms.
Oh, farms.
Well, yes, certainly, I'm just, all resident, yeah, okay, all residential uses, schools, I'm gonna say agricultural uses,
Correct.
yeah.
Can I ask real quick, New Jersey's asking, because New Jersey's right across the river, how would they handle being included in, protecting themselves? Is that something they have to handle on their own, statewide, or is that something that they can be included in on this? That's what they're asking.
Well, what we are doing is writing an ordinance for Lower Mount
Correct.
Bethel. I don't know how we could,
How do they protect themselves? That's a question for the, future, just to.
well, they'll have to protect themselves. You know, I don't know what we could do.
Yeah, that's, it's been a complication,
Right.
there's a lot of environmentalists been working with us in New Jersey.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, we would hope that by protecting ourselves, we would be protecting them, being that they're even that much farther away. Did you want to say something?
No, just that the township board of supervisors really only has jurisdiction and authority to regulate.
Right.
people. So,
Right.
as far as any impact on outside people, that's something that obviously can be taken into consideration, but we can't,
Yeah.
the concern needs to be.
Where they're not in and how do they protect themselves from those right?
Right.
Right across the line.
Okay, go ahead,
I'm
sir.
sorry, so residential, single-family residences are covered under?
All residential uses, yes, yes.
I just to add up to the point about the farms too, I would make sure it includes also any sort of, livestock or animals that are used, or equine animals or anything like that, even for hobby farms, because there are also a lot of studies that show not just loud noises, but constant noises has a lot of stress on animals that can affect growth, can affect when they go into heat, can affect milk production or egg strength. And like one of the examples is cows don't actually know where noise is coming from a lot of times, so it's hard for them to reference a specific point, so it's severe stress. So especially if you have maybe like a horse barn, or folks that have that, I would make sure you include also livestock and related animals.
And go ahead.
Wildlife and farming.
Right, right, it doesn't even have to be farmland, I mean, just wildlife.
Yeah.
And that would fit in exactly because it's all about sensitive receptors. They are sensory creatures as well, so we should definitely include them. Agricultural uses, farm, animals,
Bees, pollinators, bats.
and wild.
Birds.
Yes, those are all very good points. Go ahead, Sandra.
I think you should also add the Delaware River Valley Scenic Byway. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
The Delaware
in other
River
words,
Byway.
see, when I'm thinking about where this is going to apply, because I read through it, if it's abutting the highway, it would not be a grade 1 buffer area because it doesn't have a sensitive receptor. You know what I mean? But what you're saying is the byway itself should be.
Well, because the way that it was established was to increase tourism and make it a destination so that it would increase income to the township.
Right. Well, we can put that in there. And scenic byways. So in other words, again, this mainly shows up when we are talking about types of buffers between properties, and when they talk about them, the ones that involve sensitive receptors have more strict controls. So we would include that with the byway as one, even though it wouldn't necessarily have, otherwise a sensitive receptor on the other side, but we'll just include it. And then we'll go with that. Does anyone on the commission have an issue with that? No? All right, I think that works. Any other points there? Okay, we are moving along. next section. This one deals with, this one is going to, it's, what it talks about is how we are putting it into the ordinance, the ordinance itself. So this one, we're going to have to work on a little bit. It says, digital infrastructure facility, hyper digital infrastructure facility, and digital infrastructure facility accessory uses. They would be applied on section 984, 985, and 986, indicated within sections 985. In other words, what this is doing is just formatting it into their overall zoning ordinance. So this one, I don't think we really need to address, because this is going to be standing all by itself, standing alone. So when we get to this point, going over this in a little more detail with the legal people, when we go to actually put this all together, I don't think we will need to include any of this, because what it's saying is here's how we're going to fit it in. And but I'll make sure that that is true before I just flush it down the toilet. Now, the next part is conditional use regulations applicable to digital infrastructure facility, hyper digital infrastructure facility, and digital infrastructure facility uses. Okay, what this is talking about is, it says conditional use regulations applicable to digital infrastructure facilities and hyper ones and accessory uses shall comply with the following requirements in addition to the general conditional use standards in this Article 900. So we also have a whole section on conditional use standards. So what we would do is we would just simply reference it to our conditional use standard, right? And then we would say, where a phased development is proposed, the applicant must demonstrate that such standards can be satisfied at the time of completion of the first phase, as well as all subsequent phases of development. If the applicant fails to affirmatively demonstrate compliance with any required standard through competent, substantiated, or substantial and credible evidence, the proposal shall be deemed as not permitted. In other words, if you don't follow the rules, you don't get the certificate, right? And it says in the industrial district, and all of the conditional use application and the conditional use application shall be denied. So that is obviously very important, and we're going to make sure that we include that, I would think, right? We have to make sure that we follow rules. The next part deals with electrical demand disclosure, infrastructure capacity, and impact standard. Now this section is very important. I mean, if you just read the opening part of it, you can tell, okay, this is where the real meat and potatoes are going to be. Like, we have to make sure that we're protected from the standpoint of electrical demand. We don't want ours to disappear because they sucked all the juice down. Infrastructure capacity, we have to make sure that we have enough water and impact, and that our systems are can deal with a data center and still function. So it says, the applicant shall disclose the total electrical demand of the facility at full build-out expressed in megawatts. That's very important. We're going to need to know, as early on as you can tell us, what your total electrical demand is going to be, including IT load, cooling systems, all supporting infrastructure. The applicant shall disclose the maximum designed electrical demand at full build-out expressed in megawatts, including all supporting systems. Disclosure of electrical demand shall be used solely for land use impact evaluation and shall not be deemed approval or denial of utility service. And again, we're not in the utility business. That's not what we do, is deny or allow service. But what we're saying is we need to know so that we can, so we can plan accordingly within the township. No DIF, which of course means, our digital infrastructure, or hyper DF shall be approved unless the applicant demonstrates through competent and credible studies that adequate infrastructure capacity exists to serve the proposed facility at full build-out without creating adverse impacts to public safety, health, and welfare and of course not Low Hill, but Lower Mount Bethel. The township shall evaluate adequacy with phased energization based on utility capacity confirmation. So again, what we're going to want to know is how much power are they going to need, and are they going to be able to meet that without having adverse effects on us, on the public. That's where we're going. Okay? All right. Utility infrastructure impact. The applicant shall identify any required new or expanded electrical substations, transmission lines, utility upgrades, and shall provide written documentation identifying financial responsibility for such improvements and any anticipated capacity issues. Nothing herein shall require the township to approve or deny utility interconnections. And again, that's protecting us to make sure that there is adequate power for these. Backup power generation and fuel storage, the applicant shall disclose the number of backup generators, the combined standby generation capacity. So in the event that there's a power failure and they're going to use backup generators, we want to know how much power are they going to be producing, anticipated generator testing hours, and total on-site fuel storage volume expressed in gallons. This fuel storage area shall be no closer than 500 feet from the property line. Now, in Low Hill Township, I'm assuming that their backup plans will involve mostly like liquid fuels, things like that. I would imagine that here, with the availability of the pipelines, we're probably going to be dealing more with natural gas. So what I think we're going to have to do, and Bruce and I were talking about this earlier, is we're going to have to make sure that we have built into this that any type of gas pipelines that are going to be used for power generation meet all the federal and state standards of gas pipelines. Okay, since the gas isn't necessarily stored like oil would be for your backup generators, and if they're going to reroute pipes and extend them, we would just want to make sure that they're following all of the rules. And again, townships don't generally do things like monitor and govern underground pipelines because we can't supersede the federal government or the state government in that, but we can make sure that they adhere to the rules that they need to follow for those things.
Just a suggestion here, though.
Go ahead.
Cover us. For the fuel storage volume, I would like to see that bumped up to 1,000 feet instead of 500 feet. I believe if you look in the Montgomery and the Bucks County one, they're using 1,000 feet as their general.
Okay.
Thank you. Good.
So instead of 500, you would like
1,000 feet.
Fuel.
Yeah. Right. Okay. From any property line. Okay. We'll put that in there. Continuing. The following requirements are objective land use performance criteria intended to evaluate site-specific impacts and shall not be construed to regulate telecommunication services, utility rates, or energy markets. Electrical demand disclosures. The applicant shall disclose the total electrical demand at build-out in megawatts of, okay, yes.
That section about the electrical demand, I don't know if it'll be the place or if it's something we could do, but something prioritizing electrical restoration. If there's a big power outage, I think the residents should be prioritized that power restored since they have backup generators. I don't know if that's something we can include.
Well, I mean, it's something to think about. Hold that thought for now, right? Okay, I'm sorry, I got us all confused there. Okay, continuing then, noise standards. It says the applicant shall demonstrate an ability to comply with the decibel limitations identified in, and then they refer to their own. Now, this is going to be, I think, a very important part of this, because a lot of what I have read, and I'm sure a lot of what you have read, because you've been reading a lot of this, is the noise associated with data centers. And so, you know, what they did is just simply refer back to their own noise standards. Well, what we have, and what I am going to propose to the commission here, is that we follow the guidelines that are in the data center ordinance guide. And so what I'm going to do for this section, which is just simply stating that we have to follow the rules that are established, is say that, you know, we would like the noise standards to follow the standards that are detailed in, and then name the section in here where they apply. So I'm not going to go over those yet. I'm just going to say that we are going to reference a later portion of this zoning ordinance, this particular standalone ordinance, all right? So that's all that's going to say, but we certainly are going to pay attention to that. The next part is cooling systems and water use. The applicant shall identify the type of cooling systems utilized and disclose the maximum anticipated annual water consumption expressed in gallons per year. Traffic and construction impacts. The applicant shall submit a traffic impact analysis addressing construction phase traffic, including oversized equipment deliveries where impacts are identified. The township may require reasonable traffic management or mitigation measures. Emergency coordination plan. The applicant shall submit an emergency services coordination plan addressing fire protection, hazmat response, battery systems, fuel storage, site design, and shall provide adequate emergency access and safety features consistent and applicable with the adopted township codes. So there, obviously, we're going to have to make sure that, you know, the fire department understands exactly how they would have to address any type of issue that came up in this on this campus. Compliance with use regulations. The applicant shall demonstrate an ability to comply with the use regulations applicable to digital infrastructure facility and digital as applicable identified in 986. In other words, the user is going to make sure that they are complying with all of these things that are set out in that section right there. Okay. Now, does anyone have anything they'd like to add on that? Go ahead.
I like what I hear so far.
Okay.
But I think something should be included to have town industries get a baseline noise for them now.
Okay, that's all going to be talked about when we talk about the noise. Okay, there's a whole section, and you're absolutely right. They're going to have to do a pre-test where they monitor the sound. They're going to have to do like a post-test.
Because I think they're already too loud.
Agreed.
Well, that's when we get to sound, we're going to talk all about that. And you know, I don't mean to say, okay, stop.
No, I understand.
But stop.
I understand. But we
Okay, good.
mentioned noise, and I thought.
Yes.
Thought that was my opportunity.
Yes. And when we get to that, I'll go back to you. Go ahead.
I think when we get to a point where we're referencing the document with the decibels of the sound measurements.
Yes.
We only know what we know at this point, and to think about it going forward, if there's more science, more discovery, some kind of legal language in there to incorporate any future, you know.
Well, yeah, hold that thought, so when we get there, you can say, now, how about this? And I'll say, oh, yeah, you said that right. Because they, even at the town meeting, remember, they were telling us, sound has been evolving, who knows, by the time we make this build out, it might be completely new, different ways. And you're absolutely right, and we should build that into the whole thing. If there are upgrades that would make anything better, we should make them do that. That's a very good point, thank you.
But I'm thinking conversely, if science proves that it's disturbing the wildlife and the farming and,
Yeah.
even more so than we know at this point in time.
Then we're going to
we
need,
have like some kind of flex point to adjust the requirements.
I don't know how that could be done, but we can certainly try.
We can ask Peter.
Yes, all right. Okay. Okay, the next section deals with the area and bulk, all right? It deals with the size of buildings that can be found in this thing. Now, as we said, and as you know, Mr. Zader has pointed out, you know, we do have conditions for industrial use, no matter what the industrial use is. But for here, you know, we can be specific. Now, what they call for is, it says, here's the beginning. It says dimensional standards of these facilities will be modified and supplemented as follows. The maximum building height of digital infrastructure, it says, shall be 35 feet high. Now, as Tim pointed out, this guide says 50. Our own condition is 45. 35 is you know, fairly short.
I would say that's the lowest I've seen.
Yeah, and when you think about the structures that are already over there, the smokestacks and all that other stuff, 35 feet is like nothing compared to those. I'm leaning more towards just going with what we have already put in our zoning ordinance, which is 45 feet.
Yeah, but that's including the rooftops. So just put in perspective, the buildings over by Academy, those warehouses, those are approximately 35 feet. So just to give you some height reference there, just to put a little bit of picture to it. It's not that high.
Right.
I'm looking at Moore Township right here, and they're doing 60 feet. So
Right.
I think sticking with our zoning and sticking with the 45 feet would be the right way to go.
Okay.
Does that include the equipment on top?
That would
Yes.
include the equipment, so building like 30,
Antennas?
yeah,
Everything.
everything. So if they open your
The
cooling
highest
towers
extent
or
of anything
something.
they put on the building.
Yeah.
Here's what it actually says. The maximum building height of digital infrastructure facility shall be, and instead of 35, I'm gonna make it 45, inclusive of roof-mounted equipment such as cooling, ventilation, HVAC, cooling towers. So,
Measured from where?
measured from the ground base level of that building.
Average ground or finished floor?
We'll say that again.
Average ground around the building or the finished floor of the building? Where are you measuring the height from?
I would say the average ground around the, it's spelled out in our own zoning ordinance, so whatever that is what I think we should go with, all right? Do you have a particular preference?
I don't know what the ordinance says for the.
Well, I don't know either.
How the building heights are calculated. So if they put an antenna on the building, which is 15 foot tall, the building can only be 30 feet.
Right, yes.
And measure it off of the finished floor or the ground, the average ground level.
I think so, yes, yes. Okay. In no event shall the maximum height of a digital, shall a facility, and mounted equipment such as cooling, exceed the height of the principal building in which the use is an accessory. So when it comes to an accessory building, the accessory building can't be higher than the building it's serving. So, in other words, no building is gonna be higher than 45 feet, but if the building that the accessory is serving is 30 feet high, the accessory building can't be higher than 30 feet. So in other words, it would have to be under that. That's what that's referring to. And it says accessory uses shall be set back at least 500 feet. Infrastructure facilities and accessory uses shall all be at least 500 feet from the property boundary line.
I would like to make a recommendation for 1,000 feet, going along with Montgomery and Bucks County.
Okay,
Was that already computer storage or for bulk?
That was in the Bucks County, they did 1,000. I don't know if that's for a lot, there's a lot of townships that only require 200 feet or less, so.
right, now 1,000, you know, we'll have to I'd like to go over that with Justin in a little more detail and, you know.
1,000 feet sounds like a lot, but it's really not when you measure it out.
Right, I get it. We're dealing with, you know, a limited amount of acreage. I mean, it's a sizable amount of acreage, but, you know, when you start pulling in 1,000 feet from every boundary, that's,
Just makes it tougher for them, that's all.
hey, listen, I understand. But what we don't wanna do is end up, you know, being challenged, is what we wanna try to avoid as well, so.
If I'm reading those paragraphs, A and B, it just says the digital infrastructure facility accessory uses. It doesn't say the digital facilities itself, it's just the accessory. So is this building height for all data center buildings or just accessory buildings?
It says, use regulations applicable to digital infrastructure facilities and accessory uses. Well, this is for all of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because under A and B, it just says.
Right, we'll make sure that, you know, we're talking about all of them. Okay. All right. Okay, water and sewer service standards. If the use is to be served by a public water supply, see, this is not something that this township has. However, our own zoning ordinance makes mention of public water supplies frequently because we don't know what's gonna happen in the future. So even though it's stating, you know, if it's going to be supplied by a public water supply, you know, we are probably, and I think we should leave this in here because it's in keeping with our zoning ordinance, because once again, who knows where we're going to go, and we wouldn't wanna have to change it just because we, you know, joined like the 20th century and got water around here. So, see how that goes. Anyway, I would be inclined to leave that in there. And what it's asking is, what it's saying is, if the use shall be served by a public water supply, the applicant shall submit documentation from the public authority providing such water service that certifies that they can supply such water service. The applicant shall submit a water feasibility study containing at a minimum the following information. So in other words, if we ever do end up with public water, then this would kick in. Even if it doesn't kick in the beginning, it would become something that they would have to address at that time. In any case, you know, they would have to supply the following information: projected water demands, the projected water demands of the use. So they would have to tell us how much water are you going to need, the source of the water to be provided. Now, when they had their town hall, and again, whenever I reference the town hall, I'm referencing the only group that has come forward and talked about putting a data center here. There may be future data centers that come as well, but, you know, and we have to make sure that we are dealing with all of these. But what they said was that in their case, they planned on trucking in all the water and trucking out all the waste. Now, I don't know how that is even like remotely feasible, but you know, I don't know everything, so I guess they must have some sort of plan. But if that's what they're going to do, then you know, then they won't have to adhere with this, but we'd have to see proof that that's what they're going to do, and they're not going to be tapping into anything else.
Well,
hold on. A description of how the water will be used, including the amount or proportion of water to be used for each of these purposes: cooling, humidity control, fire suppressing, and domestic usage. In other words, there's going to be people there, they're going to have sinks, they're going to have toilets, right? They're going to be using it meaning for cooling. So there's an awful lot of water demand, there's an awful lot of types of demand that they're going to have to explain to us when they do present. So there's a lot that's going to go into the water usage. A description of the amount of or portion of water withdrawal that will be recycled or discharged, and by what means. In other words, if some of the water is coming in and is going to just simply be recycled, we want to know how much is going to be recycled. If some of it is coming in and then going out, we need to know how much comes in, how much goes out. A hydrogeological map and detailed study of the area within a radius of at least 1 mile from the parcel containing the use. Now here, I had a legal question when it says at least 1 mile, what does that mean? I mean, it's kind of vague. I mean, I think we should either make it 1 mile or say like 1.5 miles, or, you know, we might want to look at that since, you know, the township, almost everybody in the township is relying on a well. And you know, the hydrogeological study is going to be, I think, a very important part of this, because if they're going to be extracting a lot of water, you know, we don't know how that's going to affect people. So we may want to expand that out farther. What do you think, Justin?
I like the 1 mile.
You like 1 mile?
No, it's not enough.
As you're reading through this, I think this is the one area that I saw was a little vague.
Yeah.
It talks about if the use will be served by a public water supply, the applicant shall submit documentation to the public authority providing such water service that certifies that said public authority can and will supply water service, such water service. Then it goes into all these, water feasibility requirements. I think that if that's for anything but public water supply.
Right.
So it just needs, I think, to be.
Right, I think so
It
too.
could be clarified a little better.
Right, because.
That's talking about if you're doing like a surface water withdrawal or groundwater withdrawal, anything other than a public water supply.
Right, if it's a public water supply, like suppose they, you know, they decided they were gonna hook up with Portland, they're gonna run a pipe down here, and Portland's gonna, then they have to deal with Portland, and they'd have to show us that Portland says they will supply their water needs, and then
That's it.
we're good.
Yeah.
Right, but if it's not, then all this other stuff, so you're right, this has to be, it's a little vague, so, yes. Okay, so we'll have to tidy that up when we get to that point. Okay. It says, number 3, the long-term safe yield of the water source. Now, this is obviously going to be part of the hydrogeological study. You know, I've seen those done. Upper Mount Bethel had one done. The Martin Jacoby watershed was, you know, they were the ones who supplied the money for them to do that. It does make projections, but, you know, long-term safe yield is also very vague, right? Like, what's long-term? 3 years? 5 years? 100 years? I mean, you know, that, we're gonna have to, like, discuss that a little bit. But if we require them to do a hydrogeological study, we would like some kind of feedback on, you know, immediate future, you know, more distant future, and long future, kind of almost like a phase in, phase out kind of approach. Now, I don't know if a hydrogeologist can do that, but that might be something we would have to look at, you know, if it comes to that. Right? Okay. Any commissioner have anything input there? Okay. All right. Location of all existing and proposed wells within 1,000 feet of any boundary line of the parcel containing the use. So in other words, we would have to know where these wells are. Now, can the township, like, do we have access to that information from private wells?
The state has it.
Well,
After a certain year, the state has all the wells.
right, after a certain year.
Yes.
But how many of the wells in this township are not part of that? See, that, yeah, quite a few. I know mine is, you know, I mean, how many else's are? You know, I mean, there's a lot of old wells in the township. I don't know, like, can it would be in people's best interest to disclose them, because if something should happen, you would want that to be on the record, right? You know what I'm saying, Carly? We can't mandate that, can we? We wanna know where your wells are.
Voluntary survey.
Right, we could do it, yeah,
And some people didn't.
right, people didn't participate, right. So again, we don't know where all these wells are, but, you know, we could ask for, voluntary Yeah.
I have a
Okay.
question. Excuse me. What about when Penn State came out and they checked our wells when they had the fly ash spill? Did they monitor where the wells were?
I don't really know. I wasn't a part of that study. That's a good question. We may be able to get that information through the watershed, because one of the members of our watershed is Charlie Cole, and he's he's a Penn State.
I think it was Penn State, and I know they were.
I think it was too.
I can't imagine they didn't.
Do you remember that, John?
They were.
Penn State and DEP.
Okay.
Both involved.
In those, yes. So that may be, we may be able to get, those if they're, in public now. We may be able to get those, so we can, I'll check that out. Okay, thank you. The location of all surface waters, including perennial and intermittent streams, rivers, lakes, reservoirs, ponds, wetlands, springs, natural seeps within 1,000 feet of the property boundary. This was where that quarry would certainly come in, where we would want to know what was going on there. A determination of the effects of the proposed water supply system on the quantity and quality of water in wells, surface waters, the groundwater table within 1,000 feet of the property boundary line. Now, it says a determination of the effects of the proposed water supply system on the quantity and quality of water in the wells. See, again, that would be part of the hydrogeological study, and we can ask for that, certainly. I don't know necessarily how they might be able to comply with that. Can you shed any light on that, Justin?
The results of the study are gonna have to say if they have to mitigate or not, so really it's gonna come down to what the study states.
Right.
If there's a problem. And if you wanna, is there language in where it says mitigation measures have to be employed?
There is a section on mitigation measures. I'm not sure if there's any specifically related to this. But if the hydrogeological study comes back and says the aquifer is not adequate, then they can't demonstrate compliance with that section, and therefore they're gonna have to do something else.
Right, change their operation.
Right.
The cooling system, yeah.
Right. So, okay. All right. A statement of the qualification and signatures of the persons preparing the study. So obviously the study would have to be done by, a certified hydrogeologist.
Do you wanna put that in there?
Well, it says that.
Is it just a certified hydrogeologist?
No, it just says there's a statement of the qualifications.
It doesn't state he's a certified hydrogeologist.
So he's Ed the plumber, and he's got a certificate. Here it is. So yes, I think, yeah, you're probably right, Justin. We better include that he is not. That's something we might have to do a little research on, because I don't know what, we might make up a title that doesn't really exist. A certified hydrogeologist. I don't know if that such a person exists.
I know there's a licensed geologist.
Right.
A certified hydrogeologist,
Yeah, we'll look into it. But we'll add that,
you know.
Do we have the right to reject the person that they pick if we feel he's not?
Can we pick the person?
Or can we do it at their expense?
Well, what we're going to say is that this person would have to be a certified person. So if they say, here's his credentials, then they would have met the ordinance.
What if Talon has somebody who's certified and?
Well, again, you know, I think if you have professional certification, you know, it's not really ours to judge necessarily. You know what I mean? So if someone has the certification, we're gonna have to say, okay.
What about independent certification?
Independent, well, now that makes sense. Independent, you know, I like that word because, you know, that would mean that it's not someone on their staff.
Right on.
I would say if you are able to include language that says approved by the township or reviewed by you, so you know that it's also not just a hired person.
Right.
Independent or not, but it's consistently used by them to get the results that they need to get
Right.
So if there's any language to be included that you at least get to review or series or approved by you,
Right.
for any expert.
Okay, so we're going to add independent and approved by the township. And we want to see your credentials.
And should we put township engineer?
Engineer. Yes. So it's all going to be on you, Justin. Anytime. Okay. The applicant shall provide proof and review and approval from the Delaware River Basin Commission for projects proposing water withdrawals of 100,000 gallons per day or more than over a 30-day average period from any source or combination of sources within the Delaware River Basin, or any consumptive water use of 20,000 gallons per day or more over a 30-day average from any water source. Now, I think that the Delaware River Basin Commission would kick in automatically, correct? I mean, if they were going to make any kind of withdrawal, they would have to go through the Delaware River Basin Commission.
You meet these thresholds, yes.
Yes, well, that's what I mean,
Oh, yeah,
right,
absolutely.
yeah, and that we would have to, what they're saying is the township would have to see the proof that you've done that, is what we're saying.
It goes on the DRBC docket, which goes.
Right. Yes, exactly. The applicant shall demonstrate that adequate means of wastewater disposal, including domestic wastewater, in other words, their septic lines, and wastewater used for cooling and industrial purposes have been provided and approved by the township's sewage enforcement officer and/or the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. I think when it comes to the cooling waters, I think the PADEP would have to kick in there. I mean, if we're talking about their on-site septic system for, a lot of times data centers don't have very many employees, so their septic, flow probably might not be all that much and can be handled on an on-site system. But when it comes to wastewater, that is part of their cooling process, I think that we definitely need DEP approval, I would imagine.
100%. I think you have to put it here and permitted by DEP.
Yes. Right, and that would be dealing with the cooling water. Cooling water discharge, right? Okay.
It have to be permitted. If we're talking about their wastewater, that's permitted by DEP.
Right.
You have to get a planning module approval. This is not just for the cooling water, it's the domestic wastewater and
Right.
the wastewater used for cooling. It's all water.
Right, that's what it's kind of a catch-all thing right there. And really, it should be broken out, I think, because, like I said, their septic wastewater might not amount to very much in terms of, projected employment in some of these things is, security guards and, some administrators, there might be 6, 7 people on a shift, you don't know.
It's septic and process water. So
Right.
Wastewater used for cooling and industrial purposes, that's the process.
Right, right.
I think it's a catch-all in what it's happening.
Okay.
Having there, approved and permitted by DEP.
Yes. Okay. Utility infrastructure coordination. Okay, well, before we get to that, did anyone have any other questions about the water? Because that will ultimately be that's gonna be a very important part.
Yeah, is it necessary or beneficial to tie in what additional water requirements that would be driven on Talon's behalf, right? So to supply the additional electrical load, presumably Talon would double capacity, and
Well-
that drain on the system as well as.
See, in that case, Talon, this is my reading of this, and Carly, you might want to tell me a little what. But in that case, Talon would be essentially the accessory use, like they would be part of the whole data center structure, and they would be the accessory to that. So they would certainly be part of all of this if they are supplying you know, the power and the cooling and the water for that. Wouldn't you see it that way?
Yeah, I don't know if accessory is the correct term, but I think.
Okay, well, I mean,
It is
since,
part of the application.
right, but I mean, in terms of like fitting into the, you know, the definitions, what would Talon be? They wouldn't be the main structure or the main facility, but they would be an accessory facility to that.
About secondary parking.
Well, yeah, secondary. Well, but see, again, that's the reason why we define terms, is so that we don't introduce a lot of other terms. So rather than say secondary, we just say accessory, and then that's them.
Well,
So, hold on. So again, what I'm suggesting is that they would fall under this, because they would be the accessory to that when it came to, you know, supplying the electricity.
Yes.
Well, I don't know.
It would be up to the applicant to comply with the requirements.
Right.
And so that would be part of the electrical demand disclosure.
Right. Right.
I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, right, I see what you mean, right.
How
So,
separately.
well, what would happen there then okay, Talon would be, they would be supplying electricity, and then they might have a greater cooling demand, but that would be, I guess, on them. So that would be between them and the Delaware River Basin Commission. And so, see, in my mind, what would happen there is, like, we would have to hope that the DRBC sees the whole gestalt. They see the whole process, and they realize that, okay, these people need a lot more water, but so do these people, because they're supplying what these people need.
So hope's not a strategy, right? So that's why I bring up the question, right?
Right.
So I understand
I
the two
get
separate
it.
things. But
I get it.
see the data center, people say,
Yes.
hey, I'm gonna use 30,000 gallons.
Right.
But
But-
meanwhile, Talon needs to use another 200,000 gallons.
Right.
To meet
Now,
that demand.
again,
And there's separate issues.
That should have been part of the discussion, I think, when Talon was built. So right now, if they're only producing 1 gigabyte of electricity, and they're gonna go up to 2, and their water use is double, but that should have been part of their build out, I think, when they built Talon.
well, I think that, and John, I think we have discussed these in our watershed. Talon has already got permits to take water out of the Delaware. And the permit allowance is much greater than what they are using right now, right?
That is correct.
So in other words, I'm just gonna make these numbers up, so please don't quote me. They get 12 million gallons a week, and they're only using 4. So they have, you know, a lot of capacity that they're not using. But your point is taken. All of this, you know, they're going to have to be the ones that are going to have to balance any water that's coming out of the Delaware River. That's their job. So when I say I hope they're doing their job, and we can't legislate hope, and hope isn't, it isn't, something you can base a whole lot of things on, but that's their job. So, they have to do their job, and they do go about things in a scientific way most of the time. So we're gonna assume that, they would understand the whole process.
They're also regulated by the PEC, so to the extent, the township can necessarily impose requirements on that power for that entire company, but it's now or whatever.
Right, that's governed by, that's not our purview.
And we can't assume that there will not be a data center in Upper Mount Township, fully now that it's approved as well.
Right, and they're gonna be also taking power, and they might be getting power from town, so we don't really know a lot of that stuff. Go ahead.
Just a little insight.
Yeah.
There's, 2 separate power plants, okay?
Mhm.
Now, there's the main plants, and then there's a combined cycle plants up on the hill. Okay? There's a pipeline that goes from the lower plant to the upper plant, and there's a meter on it. And they track how much water goes from one plant to the other. And that's a number that goes back to the state, I believe.
Okay.
So they know who's using how much water.
Right, and the
So
the
this is probably
DRBC.
gonna happen for these, they're not gonna be trucking water in. Come on.
Right, it seems unlikely, but
Yeah.
again, I don't know what capacity all of this is at in terms of where the DRBC thinks they can keep taking water out of the Delaware, you know? I mean,
I have no
people downriver need water in the Delaware River to control the salt line, you know, Easton drinks the river. If the river goes dry, Easton's, you know, they don't have any water.
Does that impact our aquifer level?
Well, again, yeah, and again, that's why there's going to be the hydrogeological study. Yes,
They don't. Can I say something?
yes.
Oh, you
Go
said
ahead.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, another factor we have to consider is karst geology. Okay, we're sitting on limestone, folks. If you just go over here to Hercules Cement, okay, it's not Hercules Cement, it's boozy right now. They're pumping about 60 million gallons a day out of water out of the quarry. It flows into the Bushkill Creek. It goes under Route 33 bridges. They're replacing the bridges, were just put in. Yes, they were put in $6 million a number of years ago. Bridges are supposed to work 50 years, okay? Didn't make 50 years. They're putting the bridge in right now. They're replacing the bridges. July 10th, we're gonna have traffic everywhere. Now, they're pumping 60 million gallons of water a day on karst geology. It flows into Bushkill Creek. 35 billion gallons of water disappear within 900 feet of those two bridges. It's going underground. It's been getting worse every year. There are sinkholes everywhere. And we're not talking little holes. We're talking holes that would swallow this entire room, okay? We are sitting on karst geology. If we put in any wells that demand a high movement of groundwater into the well, you get a cone of depression. You're moving water through karst, limestone, which dissolves, okay? I would hope that we would be very anti-wells for supplying massive amounts of water, and I think it's time the township develop a karst ordinance, not today, but you better think about it, because they lost homes over in the Brookwood subdivision, okay? 4 homes are gone, okay?
Okay, John, so what you're saying is, and I think that, you know, probably this wasn't addressed in Low Hill, maybe they don't have a whole lot of limestone that underlies the township, I don't know. But I think your caution there is something we should definitely include. That, you know, as a result of the karst geology that underlies the township in many areas, using well water is, you know, not something that is recommended.
Not recommended if we can avoid that,
Yeah,
okay? And
right.
you mentioned fractured rock.
Right.
There's an Epler formation.
Right.
It goes right through Tammany. It comes
Right.
our direction, okay? I have sinkhole insurance at home,
That's right, every home should have.
okay? If you're in the limestone belt, it's relatively inexpensive.
It is.
But that Epler belt, they just put a sewer line through there, and they're repairing sinkholes all the time.
Yeah.
I've seen homes in
Okay.
deeper states.
Yeah.
So-
Right.
Okay, so I'm just saying, we need to be aware of that with wells.
Yeah, well,
Pumping of water,
And
okay?
thank you for bringing that up, John, because that is a very important issue in our township. Yes. Now, it's now 8:30, so we've been at this for 2 hours. What I'd like to do is I'd like to go to the section that deals with sound, because I don't think we're gonna get through this whole thing tonight, but I think that that's one that even if you go to the Low Hill Township and look this all up yourself, you won't find that there, because I've adapted the language from the handy dandy guide that I have here, so I would like to go over that while I have all of you here. And then what I would like to tell you is that in the interest of moving along, members of this group are going to get together with Carly and with Justin and continue what we are doing here. Now, I want you to understand that we put the whole township zoning ordinance together, and on 2 occasions out of hundreds of meetings, people from the public showed up. Now, that's not the case now because the township is obviously consternated. All right, we're concerned about a very specific development. But what I'm telling you is that we are going to continue working on this, and then the next meeting that we have, which if you have noticed on the website, instead of having just one meeting on the 3rd Tuesday, we're going to have a meeting on the 1st and the 3rd. So our next meeting will be in early July. What we hope to do is to come back to you with, and we will put it on our township website so that you can look at it, and that, you will certainly have the opportunity to weigh in on any other issues that we will be discussing without you in front of us. What I'm saying is, we've done it without mom and dad looking a lot, and, you're gonna have to trust us, okay? But, just like the zoning ordinance, there will eventually be a public hearing, and everybody will get a chance, anybody who wants to will be able to weigh in, and, it won't be this, you only got 3 minutes. You can weigh in as much as you would want, all right? But again, what I want to do right now is go right to the sound, because that's very important, and you won't find that on the Low Hill website, all right? So, yes. Well, again, we're taking all that out because that relates to...
Did you see the phone?
All right. Now, if you do have the ordinance, I'm now, it actually begins on page 17, all right? Okay? Now, what you see there, air quality standards, all right? What the data center ordinance guide has given us is ordinance language. And as I said, the Low Hill Township stuff kind of goes along with this, so I think that they did consult this anyway. But I'm going to read to you the ordinance language that is proposed by the Data Center Ordinance Guide from Montgomery and Chester County, all right? The ordinance language is as follows. First of all, there will be noise and sound studies. Pre-construction noise study. The applicant shall submit a pre-construction noise study prepared by an acoustical engineer establishing baseline ambient noise and vibration levels, and shall include different times of day. The noise study shall include a narrative describing anticipated operational impacts to sound levels, and it should include an octave band analysis. So in other words, what we also want to know is not only how loud the sounds are, but what vibrational frequencies they're in. So, low sounds, high sounds, especially when we talk about farm animals and wildlife, they have different hearing ranges than people. So it has to be analyzed in the frequency ranges as well. The noise study shall account for any proposed electrical substations, on-site power generation facilities, and other data center accessory uses that may generate noise. In other words, it's got to be the total sound, not just what the hum from whatever the data centers do. But if there's a power outage and now all of a sudden we have the generators on, what's going to happen? We need to know what happens at maximum sound production, right? So there's going to be a pre-construction noise study. Now, as I think about this, I think this is going to be very important, and it's also going to be a very interesting study, because I go fishing at John Mauser's house, and he lives right next to the power plant. Now, the power plant has been around long before there were zoning levels and sound levels in the township. So they're not really constrained, other than by they want to try to be good neighbors and not make it really, really loud. But I think that, and later on we're going to get to you know, what are the acceptable decibel levels, I'm pretty sure that when we go and do the pre-study, when we look at their boundary and we go to take a reading, before they turn on a single switch, they're gonna be over that level. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see how they could not be. So, at this point, this ordinance language is going to have to protect us from making it any louder over there. Like, it can't really be about, you know, having a certain level of noise, because if you live there, and I know a lot of you do, especially a lot of you who are here, that's why you're here, because this is going to affect you, you can already hear the power plant. So, like I said, this is going to be a very interesting study. And once we get to that, but see, the ordinance deals with that, as you'll see, all right? Then there's going to be a post-construction noise study. The applicant shall submit a noise study of existing operations no sooner than 1 month, but no more than 12 months after the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. In other words, once they get their certificate of occupancy, they're going to have, I think 12 months is a little bit long. I would like to move that to 6 myself, you know.
I agree with 6 months. Moore County has theirs at 6 months.
6 months, like 12 months, like you can, you know, have a year where, you know, you can blow the ears out of people. I don't like that. So then we do the post study, right? It says sound shall be measured at all property lines. So in other words, wherever the property lines are, we're going to have to take readings. The study shall use full spectrum modeling to address low frequency noise. Again, it's going to have the frequency band associated with it. The pre-construction noise study establishes a baseline ambient noise level in excess. If the pre-construction noise study establishes a baseline ambient noise level in excess of the maximum sound level permitted, and again, this is what we were talking about, level permitted under this chapter, the post-construction study shall demonstrate that operations of the proposed use do not materially increase the baseline ambient noise as measured at the property line. So this puts a serious constraint on them. What it's saying is you can't make it any louder. Now, Justin, is this something that, like if I'm the people putting this on, I'm going to go to court and I'm going to say, look, I'm trying to be as quiet as possible, but I'm dealing with an environment that's already very noisy, and all I'm doing is making it a little bit above. I mean, I'm all in favor of still putting it in there and making them go through that, but I can imagine if I was on the other side, what I would think. And that is, how can this be fair?
What does the township's sound ordinance say, noise ordinance say now?
We don't have a noise ordinance.
No noise ordinance?
We had a very long battle about that, and paid a lot of money for a study, and put it all together, got it in front of the supervisors, and the hue and the cry from the people killed it. So we don't have one. Now, in the ordinance, in the zoning ordinance, there are, you know, property line sound levels in the industrial zone that are already there. And a lot of what they have here are very similar to what we already have, right? So, you know.
I'm familiar with property line sound levels, like whatever, 55 decibels, 60 decibels, can be measurable.
Right.
You need a sound meter to measure it.
And you gotta have a certified.
Right, a certified individual to
Yes.
take the readings, so.
You can't take your cell phone out and wave it around. No.
But what you're describing seems reasonable, but we're gonna have to investigate it further.
Right. But what I'm saying is, I can see that being somewhat problematic.
Challengeable, yes.
But I still think we should put it right in there and say you can't go above the ambient level. So even though we're saying it's got to be, you know, the number that they're suggesting, and I think is reasonable, is 40 decibels, you know, you know, but if it's already above that, which I think it will be, just having spent some time in the river there.
You just have to be careful that even though it might be exceeding it in a specific area, that you're not going to apply that to the entire borders of the industrial zone.
No.
Right? Because
Well,
it's certainly
it's-
not exceeding it, for instance, on Martin Creek, Belvedere Highway.
Probably not, no.
Right.
Again.
And if you say, okay, well, you know, hey, it's exceeding it over here, so we'll set that as the level. Now all of a sudden, you wanna be careful, you don't wanna set that level as being at borderability or at the total border of the industrial zone.
So what we have to do is be careful that we say, you know, wherever these sound levels were made, those are now the accepted ambient levels for that specific site. And at that specific site, it can't go above that. Right, so we can put that language in. Right, because there would be, you know, quieter spots. Yes, but, you know, if you happen to live in one of the noisier ones, that's the thing you are most concerned with, not the quiet one. Right. And it's all about protecting the citizens. Okay.
I have a question. If it is hypothetically challenged, I guess legal, is there going to be like severability language where one item that's challenged will not void or corrupt the whole ordinance?
Oh, there's always, go ahead.
We could play with the language a little bit, just not necessarily severability, but in terms of, if it's any, if the law doesn't support that number, then it's whatever the law supports.
And I think your question, and it's, I've seen it in every ordinance that we've ever done. If a part of the ordinance, a small part of the ordinance is challenged and the challenge wins, that doesn't mean the whole ordinance is gone. It just means that specific aspect is no longer applicable. Right, so it doesn't void the whole thing. No, certainly not. And that's found in almost every, you know, that's just like boilerplate stuff they always stick in at the end. Oh, and by the way, you know, if something goes wrong here, that doesn't mean the whole thing's gone out the window. Go ahead.
I contacted the PUC one time, in our town industries. I believe, if I remember correctly, they take noise readings a certain amount of feet from the plant. And then they go out a few more 100 yards or whatever.
Right.
So there is, I think, a kind of a grid work where they check sound levels coming from the plant.
Okay.
So.
Well, again, the way this ordinance is worded and the way our own zoning ordinance in the industrial district for any industry is worded is at the property line, because that's, you know, that's the only thing, you know, once their sound is off their property, when it's on their property, they can, you know, they can do whatever they want, but the problem with sound is it keeps going, you know, it's.
But that's the problem with the low frequency sounds.
Yes,
Because low
right.
frequency sounds have very large waves.
Right, and they travel far.
Right, and we're talking waves that are probably half-mile big waves.
Yeah, right.
So property line is not gonna do it for the low frequency sounds.
Yeah, but, yes, but when we monitor it at the property line, we could still detect it there. So, you know, that's the only place where, you know, we can begin to control it, is at the property line.
Well, personally, I think you need to know what it is now. Somebody needs to find out. And then.
Oh, yeah, well, again.
And then, you know, get a.
We're gonna have a pre-study,
What are you
like,
doing?
when they come to us, we're gonna say, okay, here's all the stuff you gotta do before you put any shovel in the ground. And one of them is, you're gonna have to delineate your whole property, and anywhere you got a property line, and, you know, however many property lines you have, however many things you have abutting them, you know, you're gonna have to test it there, and then.
But to his point, it might not be at the property line, right? You might have a concentric circle that's 500 yards out, 1,000 yards out, 1,500 yards out. Get the ambience there, because if it's low frequency and you're at the, you know, whatever, at the property line, you might be zero. But 500 yards beyond that, you might be.
Unless you can measure it going up into the air, take a drone and put the sound, the recording.
Well, okay, so here's the problem, people. Sitting in front of you is the physics teacher. Sound waves don't do this. Sound waves are not transverse, they are longitudinal. Sound waves do this. So you don't go up and lose it or down and lose it. The sound is going to be measurable and hearable and detectable at any altitude it's simply energy being transmitted in a longitudinal system, the vibrations.
But it bounces off of physical barriers.
Oh yeah, it's echoes, yeah,
Right.
sound waves will do that, yeah.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, you will be able to measure it at the property line, and it will record whatever its decibel value is at the property line. It's not like we'll miss it because it's a big wave. The wavelength itself, you're right, could be, hundreds, thousands of feet. It could be a half a mile easily. A low frequency sound wave, yes. But again, it's not this. It's this. So as it transmits, the sound can be heard wherever you are. Now, I think what you're referring to is like if you get echoes and you can have interference patterns where you might have dead spots, but as a result of sound waves that are reflecting back on themselves and canceling themselves out. But if you're standing there and you're a certain distance from the power plant, if you set up a decibel meter, you will definitely detect the sound that is moving through there at whatever frequency you're measuring it, right? So it will be able to be detected at the property line if it's going to be detected anywhere else. Okay, so in other words, you will be able to hear it at the property line if you can hear it farther away, because of the way that the sound is going to propagate through the air. Yes, sir?
I think one of the biggest problems is when you measure it, because the possibility talent generators will be running full. We know data centers themselves run noisy all the time. Plus, if their generators should kick on,
Right.
that's compounding the noise tremendously.
And again, what the ordinance says is it should be it's a noise. It takes into account when it's at its maximum generation.
Right.
Okay? So in other words, if you have backup generators going on and things like that, then you're going to have to control that. All right? Now, what this is proposing, it says, I'm going to lose my place here. It says noise mitigation measures may be required by the zoning officer when noise studies show that the use is generating noise approaching established limits. So again, if we monitor the sound, like all of a sudden, the sound seems to have increased for whatever reason, and people start complaining, and the zoning officer gets the acoustic engineer out there, and the sound is approaching the limits that they shouldn't be approaching, then we may ask them to take mitigation into effect and do what they have to do to lower it. Now, what they propose is this: sound levels at the property line shall not exceed 40 dBA. Now, dBA deals with the hearing of humans. So we tend to hear very well in the lower end of our hearing spectrum, in like the middle and lower ranges. But the DBC is the like full range spectrum. All right. So in other words, what this thing is doing is it's differentiating. And again, this would have an effect mostly on wildlife, on animals. So it says 40 dBAs at the property line between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. In other words, at night, we want it to be as, quiet. And 50 dBc. Now, 50 dBc, these are the ranges that are not really, detectable by people or picked up by people. So what this ordinance does is allow that to be a little bit higher. And then, between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., these would go from 40 to 45, and from 50 to 60. That's what they are proposing. So, how do we feel about
To be honest with you, that's pretty low, because the traffic on the Belvedere Highway is producing more sound than what that.
that? Oh, well, traffic is way above that.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So, no, it's not constant, no.
It's quiet, constant.
Right, right. So,
Do you demand studies on what levels impact dairy, cows and pollinators? Because that's important. If 50 decibels, as you say, is gonna stop milk production and breeding and pollination, this township's done.
Well-
We permit that.
well, again, these are the numbers that, the Chester and Montgomery Planning Commissions put together. Having, Sandra will tell you, when we would go through, what would be a good number, We always try to not just spin the wheel, okay, 16. Like, we would base it on, whatever we could that made sense. And I'm hoping that the people that put this together, did that. But we can do some more research on that and try to find whatever we can on what sorts of sounds have effects on animals. So, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Montgomery and Chester, are they rural? Are they farming?
Well, they're actually very mixed.
Yeah.
They have a lot of residential, they have some industrial, and they have some rural. There's still farms down there, but
But not like us?
not like us, no, oh no.
So I think that might be the difference.
It might. Again, this is going on. Bob?
I just want to get back to the comment made. It would be a sound study for baseline, and then within 6 months, another one follow to see if it's within the range it's supposed to be.
Once they have completed.
Built out.
Right. And now, then this would be like if they're doing it modularly, you know what I mean? Where they come to us and they say, okay, we're gonna do this build out right now. Then they would do the post-study of that modular part, right? And then, then within 6 months of the completion of that, then they would have to do another.
My concern is, after it was built out, it seemed like the majority of the noise is coming from the additional utility generators that surround these buildings. It doesn't on any particular building. Not including the ones that Allen has on his property, which if they want to provide the additional electricity for some
Right.
data center. What happened when the sound level, when all the generators were up and running, which is really an issue that I think people are concerned with, and they've already started running, and those things are well above the noise level. What then? What does the township do then?
The ordinance says there's a cease and desist that can be issued. They have to come into compliance.
Right, they would have to demonstrate.
Demonstrate compliance.
Okay. Now, is that something that DEP raises?
No, that would be a township level thing.
Township can put in a more restrictive sound level than the DEP?
I don't know that the DEP has sound, I don't know that they do. You know what I mean?
How about the air quality?
Well, air quality is something that we're gonna, is part of
No, I understand.
this.
Two things are gonna go together, they're gonna come from the same.
Yes.
source.
And the biggest problem is, the electrical generating station that is here and has been here and is not subject to those constraints. That's the problem, especially when it comes to sound.
Will that be a precedent?
Pardon me?
Will that be a precedent?
Well, again, when we do the preliminary study, then we will have the precedent. Then we will know the ambient level of sound at the property level. And someone asked, the gentleman back there, yes, and it has to be done at different times of the day, all right? That was your question, right, sir? Yeah, so, middle of the day, early in the day, late at night, so we have this ambient, noise. Now, when we did the township noise ordinance, And what part of it, and again, that was a very expensive thing the township then just decided not to do. But what we did was, the person who was our consultant for that sampled the township, all over the township at all times of the day, and he was able to put together a very detailed sound map of the township. And I remember very clearly when we had the public meeting, the first thing he said was, "We have a very quiet township. Do you know that?" That's what he said. And we're like, okay, yeah, not if you live over there, but yeah, for the most part, it's a very quiet township.
People that way.
Yes, exactly. That's what we like about it. Yes, ma'am.
Question I have is, so people call in and complain about the noise.
Yes,
We have a part-time zoning officer.
yes,
He's not in today.
right.
Maybe he's in tomorrow. Then he's gotta call an acoustic engineer. He might not be available for 2 weeks to come. Meantime, what is everyone doing? And then when the acoustic engineer comes, maybe that day it's quiet. How are you enforcing this? So then you're gonna have the residents saying, well, that day it was awful, and, well, now I'm here this day and it's not.
Well, when it comes to that, I see your point. All I
I
can,
don't think there's any mechanism unless you have a full-time zoning officer.
and not only that, you have to have a full-time acoustic engineer.
And we can't afford that.
No, we can't, and I don't know of any township that does.
Right.
But if there is, a problem, and it's being, registered not by just one complaining person, but by, a number of people who are noticing the same thing.
So everybody's
And,
got a call.
well, if it's a big problem, I think everybody would, wouldn't they? I mean,
Well,
and.
now everybody expects, just like when the power goes out. Well, did you call it in? No, I thought
somebody
you
will.
did.
Yeah, I never do because my neighbor always does. But I get what you're saying. I don't know that, we can.
I don't know that there's a
we
way
can-
around that.
I don't know how to tell you that we can fix
Fix
that.
that, right.
But what I can tell you is, at least there is language there, and there are standards there that they would have to meet. And, if they're not meeting them at some point in some way, we will hopefully be able to nail it down.
Yeah.
And that's the best I can tell you right now. But you might have a couple of days where they're, how like Arden Mills had that stupid thing that was like half broken and was screeching for weeks and months. It was just making the most god-awful noise. And all they had to do was like take it down, fix it, put a new piece in and oil it. But for like weeks, all the people that lived there were just subject to that horrible noise.
So that gets to the point which I think, and again, I get it, the enforcement mechanism, right? We can have the policies that say, hey, you're in violation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's not this committee, so whatever. What are the enforcement mechanisms for a violation? Like, I would like to see, hey, you have to shut down, turn off. It's not a fine, it's not a, we'll address it, cease and desist, it's shut it down, turn it off.
Well, the first stage would be mitigation. They would have to demonstrate that they are making an effort to fix the problem, and they have to tell us what it is they're doing to fix the problem. They have identified where it is, and here's what we're doing about it. Then we go back and we retest, and we say, okay, you're still not compliant. At that point, we have to make a decision. Do we want to give them one more shot? But at some point, there would have to be a cease and desist issue. Because if they're non-compliant and continue to be, then they have to be forced into compliance. From the standpoint of municipal law, that's what you have to do.
What is that mechanism? Can the township shut down a $6
Yeah.
million data center?
There's a process they have to follow, but they could.
Yes. It would be a David and Goliath situation, but who won that, right? So go ahead.
In theory.
Well, I was gonna say too, in the language, it'd be good to have something looking out for future issues, like we're all talking about, like, subject to future, reevaluations, or subject to, same thing with like the water, if we're
Right.
sitting there looking at water issues, okay, well,
Yes.
somebody's complaining about it, you're subject to being tested again. You're subject to be further looked at. If they have a generator that they replace, and it's with, you know, a cheap, shitty Chinese one that's really loud, okay, well, all right, you're gonna get, you know, we're gonna relook at this. So I think somewhere in the language. would be-
Well, I think what you are reiterating is the woman sitting next to you gave me my favorite idea I heard tonight, which is, if there are developments, scientific, technological developments, you know, we want you to implement them. Now, how we can make them do that, I don't know, but maybe there's something we can write into the ordinance that says, and that would relate to everything, sound, you know, cooling, heat, whatever they have to deal with, electrical generation, everything, you know, somehow we should try to force them to always upgrade when it would make, a significant difference in the lives of the people that live in the township.
It's called best available technology, and you can incorporate that into the ordinance.
Thank you, Justin. No, and we can incorporate that, right?
Yeah,
So.
right now, and just as you mentioned, the cooling systems, right now, it's liquid cooling systems, particularly direct-to-chip and immersion cooling is being used. It has lower energy consumption, minimal or near zero potable water usage, and ability to support high-density computing loads. So there's language we can put in the ordinance that they basically state state-of-the-art computer system. And that reduces energy, reduces water consumption.
Right.
Potentially reduces noise.
And I think, in a lot of ways, that's kind of like self-fulfilling, because for a company, if it is more efficient, it will save them money, so they will do it, for the most part, anyway. But, to build it into it, takes it out of their hands, so that, as much as we could enforce it, that's what we would try to do, right? Okay, now, it's now 9 o'clock. I'm shot. What I would like to say is, anyone who has anything they'd like to say to us, and as I said, we're going to continue working, and the next time we meet, we hope to have gone through everything, and as we put it together, it will be on the township's website, right? And you can go and you can review our progress, and hopefully by the next time we meet, we are just about ready to go. That's my personal goal, and I think that if we do that, then it'll be in the hands of the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. Since we're working off of a document that they've already basically approved, we will just highlight the changes that we made, and hopefully that process can be speeded up. I can't vouch for anything that they do, but that's my hope. Yes.
Maybe a stupid question, but
We love stupid questions.
why does it have to go through the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission?
That was the very same question I asked today in the office. I said, is that the law? And the answer is, no, it isn't the law, but the township would not want to go down that road, because we have never done that. We're dealing with a long, long precedent, and it's not something that the people in the office would be comfortable doing, and I'm going to back off and I'm going to say, okay, if you're not comfortable, I'm not comfortable, we're not going to do
They're a
that.
private corporation with private interests.
I'm sorry?
The Lehigh Valley Planning Commission is a private organization with private interests.
Okay?
You can take that for what it means.
Okay, but again, I'm dealing with,
I know, I'm just
township.
saying.
Right.
I just want to make it public.
And if that's the way we do business, then that's the way we're going to continue to do business.
And also, just to clarify that, to the extent it's considered an amendment or sorry, my brain is not right now. Any kind of change to the zoning code, the ordinance requires that it be provided to the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, even if we didn't wait for their approval, we would still have to send it in. I mean, we would still want to get their feedback. So that's where we're at with all of that.
And that's 27-17-10 if you want to see where that is.
Okay.
The last thing I want to say, thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
again, I wanna make sure we all understand, nothing has been proposed, not a single thing. The people on this commission cannot take stands on things that have not yet been proposed. Now, the supervisors are in a different position, right? They get to evaluate, they can have public opinions. You are their boss. They should tell you what they think, right? Now, when it comes to us, you're not our boss. You can't fire us because we're not elected. We're appointed. They can fire us, right? But what we have to do is we have to remain objective. We have to be able to, when things come into us, we have to be able to say, okay, tell us, go ahead, talk us into it. Maybe it's the best idea we've ever heard, right? And we have to maintain that objectivity because none of us on this commission want to be impeached. We cannot be, we cannot have an accusation that we've already made up our mind before anything has been proposed. So, we're all in that boat, and, we are just simply responding to a request from the Board of Supervisors to come up with an ordinance that protects us when it comes to data center development. So that's what we're doing.
I have one statement.
Go ahead.
I may have missed it, if I did, I'm sorry, when we were talking about setbacks for the buildings or whatever the infrastructure was.
Yes.
We need to be sure that it is not just a certain setback from a zone, like not a certain setback from residential